Hi, everyone. Welcome to the team call. I am so excited. We have a guest speaker today who's my very own coach, Lynnette. She volunteered a while ago to lead a team call, and I was so excited that she wanted to add value to our team and to step out of her comfort zone to lead all of us. I do have two rank advancements today. My coach, Christine, became an Emerald coach today, and I know on Kelly's team, she had her coach Diana become an Emerald coach today. So two brand new Emerald coaches today. That's really exciting. And I'm just going to let Lynnette take it over. I will tell you, Lynnette and I met at MOPS, mom's group that we were a part of. We sat at the same table last year. She was the craft coordinator, and she's just super crafty, has a heart of gold, has two little boys, and she's been a coach with me since January?
End of February.
End of February, okay. So she just has a great heart to help other people, and her motto, which I love, is to live intentionally. She wants to live an intentional life, and I think that's a great, what's your team name again for when you have a team?
Live Intentional Team.
Live Intentional Team. So I love it. Okay, so girl, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and hopefully it will work. There we go. All right, you guys see it okay? All right, cool. So, all right. So like Ashley mentioned, I volunteered to lead a team call. It kind of went down a little bit differently. We were talking, just chatting one day through messaging, and I mentioned how great the calls were, but I felt bad that she had to consistently create content every week. And I know she's the leader, that's kind of expected, but I was like, we're all doing PD, we're all got stuff maybe that works for us. So, maybe if other people wanted to share, they could. And she goes, that's a great idea. Would you want to be the first one? So here I am. But I'm happy to do it. I'm a big talker, so anyone who knows me knows I'm not shy. So that means I should probably just get out of my own way, like we were just talking about a minute ago, and get started, because I don't want to run out of time. So today I'm talking about raising your standards. And most of my content is going to kind of be stuff I've got from watching either Tony Robbins. I would do a lot of his videos in my car on my way to and from work. Some from Coach Caleb, who I love, and I wonder if he's married. Anyway, I digress. And then some that's just from my life lessons. And I want to be clear from the start that I am not an expert in necessarily setting high standards and raising them in all areas of my life. In fact, what I'm talking about tonight is something that I'm just like in the first baby steps of applying within the actual coaching arena. But I do have some success and some things that I felt might be helpful for where I've obtained it in other areas of my life. So I thought if I could share and it could help someone, then they could apply it to wherever it makes the most sense, and we'll have a win. So here we go. All right, so how do you define yourself? This is one way to think about standards. Is there a message? Okay, I'm really bad at this chat thing, so if there's something I need to know, someone just wave or something. Okay, so one way to think about standards is how you define yourself. So I'd like us all just to start right now with just pausing for a moment and think about what are some words that you use to define yourself. And this could be maybe as you're, maybe when one of our team events, when we're kind of talking to new people, or in a new challenge group, or even in a social setting when you start meeting new people. What are some words that you use to define yourself? Take a minute and think about it. Get some words in your head. All right, I'm guessing you have some, and I'm guessing some of them look something like this: wife, mom, coach, employee, sister, friend, probably various other things, right? These are all completely valid. These are things that we use all the time to describe ourselves. But I would like to challenge you a little bit to think beyond maybe these words when you think about who you are and what your definition of yourself is, because these are really titles or roles, but not necessarily a standard. A standard is what kind of each of these do you define yourself as? So let me give some extreme examples. There was a lady just recently this last week, I read in the news, who was a mom of 4, and she unfortunately killed all of her kids. That's very extreme. I hate to throw that out there, but was she a mom? Yeah. So being that title didn't necessarily define who she was as a person. People who steal from their bosses, this happens all the time. They, commit fraudulent acts or embezzlement or whatever. They're employees. So again, just think about it that just those words themselves are not necessarily a standard or definition of who you are as a person. This quote is from Tony. Like I said, I do a lot of his stuff, and it said, I love it. It says, "The strongest force in human nature is the desire to be consistent with who we define ourselves to be." Does that make sense to you? It did to me. Really what's important to think about here is, when did you define yourself and what you're capable of, what your limits are? When did you set those things in place? Because really without intentionally doing that, we basically will accept whatever comes along without defining those standards intentionally. Sometimes that turns out well if we have standards that just are what are set unintentionally. For instance, I'm the oldest kid in my family of 3 girls, and for some reason, whether it was birth order or just kind of natural inclination at the beginning, I got kind of labeled the good kid out of my siblings. My younger sister got labeled kind of the stubborn, obstinate one. And I'll tell you what, we lived up to those titles. We lived up to those standards that were set upon us. And it was something that I just always knew not to delineate from. It was who I was. And it ended up becoming pretty easy to maintain that set of standards because it was just part of my identity and who I was. So it was easy for me to make choices like, saying no to drugs or alcohol or whatever, because that's just not what good kids did. However, when something happened in my personal life and my marriage a couple years back, I made a choice to react in a way that I thought was good. And my family did not see it the same way. And I can tell you that in the midst of all the hurt that was going on just with the situation, how they responded to me, because I basically deviated from what they thought, I should be, or the standards that I had set for myself, hurt worse almost than the actual situation. And basically it hurt when I was looking back on it and kind of analyzing it. Hurt because in my mind, I had to set the standards for who I was, and they were deviating away from, their perception of me and that role, that identity. Another example, my mom is overweight. I've had cellulite on my booty since I was like 12 years old. No joke. I look back at pictures of myself in my first bikini, and it was no smooth little, I was looking at pictures of Taylor Swift on the beach. She's like in her 20s. It's all smooth. I was like, mine wasn't even like that at 12. And so I just kind of had this expectation my whole life. I defined myself as maybe someone who just was never going to be an athlete. I was never going to be stick thin. It was just a standard that was set for myself as far as my identity and what I would accept. And that's what it boils down to. And when something becomes your identity, you're going to find a way to come back to it every time, because that's who you define yourself as. So, are you average? I don't know if any of you watched this video from Coach Caleb this week, but I thought it fit nicely in with this, so I incorporated it. Like I mentioned, I've had a rough couple years, and I realized at some point during that time that for a long while I had just kind of been letting myself, letting life happen, if you will. I was not living the life that I was intended to live. I was not living the life that I wanted to, really, that I was happy. And I'm not saying that everything was miserable. I had great kids. I really had a great marriage before everything went down. I had a lot of positives, but it really was just not a life of design. And we talk about that a lot too. And like Ashley mentioned, my new motto is to live with intention. If you're my Facebook friend, you've seen I hashtag that on a lot of my different posts. One of the very first areas I identified this in was health and fitness, and I'm going to get back to that later. But another was relationships. And that's where the sponge comes in. So Coach Caleb said, we're really like a sponge. We become the average of those people that we surround ourselves with. And I believe that's very much true. So what I'd like to challenge you with tonight is, have you intentionally looked at your relationships and determined if you're spending time with the right kind of people? In other words, have you set the standards for what the appropriate or acceptable influence on your life is going to be? Now, don't get me wrong, I love me some Jesus. I am all about loving and accepting everyone. I'm not talking about judging or, anything like that. But just because you love people and just because you see maybe some good in them doesn't mean that you need to accept the standard of having their level of influence on your life. Because basically your influences become your new normal or your new standard. So have you ever stopped and asked the question, am I okay with who is influencing me? Am I okay with how they talk, how they treat me, how they treat others, how they run their business, they live their life of faith, raise out their children? And because here's the thing, if you're okay with the influence that they have on you, then you need to ask, am I okay with the influence that I will have on others? Because like I said, you become the person in part because of the influences around you, and that standard then becomes normal. You're never going to be perfectly aligned with everyone. I'm not saying you have to go out and find complete clones of yourself and all your values and your standards, but it's maybe just a helpful step sometimes to be very intentional, you'll hear that word probably a lot, about taking the time to evaluate that and evaluate those standards and just stopping to ask the question and see if there are changes you should make. Now, in my life, I used to be surrounded by some friends, like I'm sure we all have, that were not the best influences, especially in teen years. I think we can name some. But this was even later in my life. I had a group of friends that I spent most of my time with. There was lots of drama. There's lots of just, I don't even know, not good stuff really. Most importantly though, there was not a lot of drive or ambition. They were just okay to be whatever, whatever was easiest maybe, whatever they felt like, was the path of least resistance. Now, they were great-hearted people, but I decided I needed to remove myself from spending as much time with them before those standards became the normal for me. I had big dreams and visions of the type of person I wanted to be, and I didn't want to lose that. So I had to make that intentional step of raising my standards. And that sounds kind of harsh, but it's just the truth, honestly. Another example was my relationship with a close family member. And basically, first of all, I'm not going to name this person because I still am hopeful that she might become a coach someday. You never know, and I don't want her name out there. But basically, this family member tried to control me for a lot of my adult life by basically playing upon my inborn sense of guilt. And I don't know why, but for some reason I carry around enough guilt for like 20 people, and she took advantage of that and railroaded me really a lot of my adult life. Now, one important thing to consider here, expecting her to change. I kept expecting her to see how she was hurting me. I kept expecting her to realize, that she was not being the type of person that she even thought she was trying to be. But when you expect, then it can, and sometimes often does, lead to disappointment. Expectation is what we place on other people. When I talk about standards, I'm talking about what we'll accept ourselves and basically what we'll tolerate. So basically, I decided to raise my standards as far as what I would tolerate in that relationship. It was hard. I'm not a confrontational person, but basically over time, I laid down some lines and some boundaries as far as what my standards were for that relationship and what I would allow and what I would tolerate. I'm worth more. I will no longer allow that behavior. And that was the end of it. And our relationship is actually much better now because of that. I do the same with my kids. I think anyone who's a parent probably does in different ways. We have certain standards that we apply, maybe even without thinking of it or meaning it. One that comes to mind when I was thinking about this with my kids is my older, almost 10-year-old, he'll be 10 next week actually, eating vegetables. Even before I joined Beachbody, I've always just been big on, you don't have to eat everything on your plate, but you do have to finish all of your vegetables. And it was never like a rule, I never said this is the rule, you have to do it, but it just became something I would not tolerate, was a plate that, person was done, but yeah, there were still vegetables on it, end of story. And so when he had a friend over a couple of weeks ago, I actually found it quite humorous when his friend said, I'm done eating. And I honestly wasn't even going to make his friend do anything. It's a guest. But he said, oh, no, you can't be done. You're just going to have to eat your vegetables. That's what my mom's rule is. And it was kind of funny to me because, again, I never said it was a rule and I wasn't expecting that. But he knew the standard and he applied it. And I think of this with my 2-year-old. I was telling someone about this recently. I've always tried to, from the beginning, instill in him manners. And please, again, I'm not a perfect parent. These are just examples that came to my head. But I've always tried to instill in him manners and please and thank yous, etc. To the point now where I've noticed lately that if, even if he's hurt, if he fell and whacked his head or is crying, or something, and you hand him a Band-Aid or you pick him up and try and remove him from the situation, he'll be bawling his eyes out and be like, thank you, Mama. That's just kind of, been instilled this standard of those manners. And I wish that maybe all kids had those manners, but I will digress again. Okay, so something we talk about also, and I say we, but I mean coaches and specifically top coaches, Ashley and others that we hear from, is our non-negotiables. And so this is kind of another way in my mind of saying our musts versus our shoulds. So most people's standards are really set far lower than what they're able to achieve. Basic. That is what it is, right? Ashley's raising the roof. Tony was talking about this study where there were people that were shown a task, a big group of people were shown a task, and they were asked to estimate how long they thought that it would take to complete the task. And there was really kind of 2 different groups of people, and they found that the people who gave themselves a very, very realistic and attainable goal would finish it in that time. And if they did it over and over and over, the same task over and over and over, they would finish it in that same exact time. And they, relied on that consistency for their definition and their standard, but it was, just that. That's all they did. But the people that maybe gave a really low time that they'd have to, try really hard, they may not have hit it the first time. They may not have hit it the second time. They may not have hit it the third time, but they kept progressively getting better, because that was what their expectation was, is that they would keep pushing for that goal and that standard. So just something to think about is maybe, are you unhappy with an area in your life? Maybe finances, relationships, coaching, obviously, your fitness, but maybe you're just not unhappy enough to do something about it. Are you just meeting that consistent expectation without really pushing yourself to what could be better? You're probably feeling and going for those shoulds, but maybe not the musts. So here's some examples of some shoulds versus musts. And these are obviously overly simplistic, but this is just another way of saying your standards. So maybe your should is, I'm single, I should probably be in a relationship. Time is passing, I want kids, maybe I should be in a relationship. But maybe your must, your non-negotiable standard, is I must not get hurt. Maybe you've been hurt before, or you're just afraid of it. And that is your must, is going to far outweigh every time that should. It doesn't mean you can't ever get in a relationship. It doesn't mean you can't ever have a good one. But it's going to not get you there near as quick as if you make that should your must. Same thing with just success and failure. And one that I kind of put in that I really liked is, I should help people as a coach. I know that's what I should do. That's what this company is about, is helping people. I should do more of that. But my must is, I must have people like me. I must not come across as that salesy person. I must not be the person that they unfriend because I'm annoying. And that is your standard and non-negotiable, that helping people will come second, because it's just something you feel you should do, but not a must. So everybody in life will get their musts. It's basic. it happens. If you must make enough money to, to pay your bills, if that's your standard, then you'll find a way to make enough money to pay your bills and nothing more. That's your must. You'll find a way. And because basically we make our musts a part of our identity. But most of us are too busy to really take inventory of and really intentionally, again, focus on our lives to determine where we need to raise those standards or implement those musts instead of shoulds. However, I really encourage, and I, again, say this to myself a lot, the difference between people who are happy and feel successful and feel like they're more where they want to be with their life are those who have raised the stakes. They're those who have raised the standards for themselves, and even, again, those around them, depending on what you're talking about. So it's easy to just say, oh, raise your standards, do it, shoot higher. But really what this needs is action behind it, right? We always talk about that. It's not enough just to positively think, although I do believe positive thinking can lead to action, but you can't just think it, you got to do it. So really standards become enforced by rituals. The things that you expect, the things that you tolerate, the things that you must have are things that happen over and over and over again. Again, thinking about my kid's example with the vegetables, it wasn't just one time that I told him at dinner time that he needed to eat his vegetables. It was over and over and over till it wasn't even something that we needed to discuss. Same thing with really anything in your life. If you rewrite your standard, you're going to need to create new rituals. And again, a ritual, a definition of just something you do over and over and over again. It's really, I think, a different way of saying habit, but I like rituals better because they have a little more like, a little more heart behind it when you say ritual. Some examples that Tony Robbins gives are things like he does a lot of rituals before he speaks. He's the speaker that speaks to like 10,000 people. And every morning he does these certain things. Every single morning he does these things. And especially every morning every day before he speaks, he does these like incantations and, just powerful messages that he repeats over and over and over again to get his mind ready and good to go. The best of the best sports players, you can talk to any of them. Our own Russell Wilson, I know. Woo, woo. They have rituals. They have rituals that they do over. And I'm not talking about like the Lucky Charm type rituals. I'm talking about things that they do to condition their body to be at its peak performance, or things that they do to condition their skill to up it to a whole nother level. They're rituals. It's not by chance. So this is probably what we all did. This is what I did, I know, when we started Beachbody. We changed our daily rituals, right? Or at least, hopefully, we did. Workouts, Shakeology, nutrition, all of that. Sometimes I think of that, and I think maybe it was a little bit easier area that it was to change our rituals because it was already defined what those rituals should be. It was already laid out. So it's a little bit easier path than sometimes when we have to create them ourselves. But it doesn't mean that there's no other way to do it. So this is a ritual or a standard that I really identified in myself, and something that I've said and really identified again with for a long time. I'm good at paying my bills. I'm just not a saver. And I have said that phrase in one form or another so many times. I've said, oh, my parents never taught me to save. They taught me to be so great with bills, but they never taught me to save because they weren't good savers. Or I've said, oh, I just don't have enough money, so I'll never be able to save. Or, whatever the time that excuse was at the time, that became my identity. I'm not a saver. So do you think I've ever really implemented anything that makes myself a saver? No, I've never implemented those rituals. So you start by rewriting it. And again, this is where that start of just raising that standard comes in. And one way to do that is to just tell myself my new identity is I am a money-saving machine. Okay? That's me. I'm a money-saving machine. No more, I'm not the saver. I am a money-saving machine. Okay, just saying it over and over isn't going to do anything. However, reminding yourself every day of who you are, again, who you are, creates that sense of identity and that definition of yourself, and it becomes a must, and you'll find a way. Some things that are, rituals that come with that is creating a budget and sticking to it. I recently started kind of some of this with myself, and I went out and found like the best budgeting tool I could find, and I have now implemented a scheduled process where I sit down and work through my specific budget, more than just my old abstract one, which was like, is things paid or not? Now it's very intentional ritual of when I'm going to do it, what tool I'm going to use, and what that process looks like. Another way is to tell people I'm good at saving. Ashley posted that video of that lady who was bat crazy, and honestly, she annoyed the heck out of me too, but she had a good message. Passionate, yes, but just couldn't listen to her very much. But she did have a good message, and if you haven't listened to it, it's on the page, but around sharing your vision. And it's the same thing with things like this, creating this new identity for yourself. Telling people, yeah, I'm great at saving. I'm a good saver. Even if you only have $5 that you've saved so far, will be a new ritual, a new sense of that identity. Also telling yourself. So you skip Starbucks. Obviously, we're trying probably not to drink Starbucks a lot anyway, but so you skip Starbucks and you take that $5 and you put it in your little savings jar at home. Do a little dance. I am a money saving machine. That is you reinforcing to yourself that good behavior. Positive reinforcement works even when it's to yourself. So again, just stop thinking in terms of those shoulds and instead think of the musts, and that fundamental identity shift can lead to those actions to, again, stay true to who you define yourself to be. So I have to talk about these labels or definitions of coaching now. And I might tick some people off with this slide, and that's okay. It's my time. I have the floor. But I hate these labels. At least I did. I'm coming around. Let me, Ashley, don't freak out. These labels have sets of standards that kind of inherently attach to them, don't they? And depending on how you look at them, it can either be a negative or a positive. So I kind of identified early on as a hobby coach, and I never really said the words very much, but at one point in a conversation with someone, they identified me as that, and then that just kind of, oh yeah, I guess I am a hobby coach, and from then on, that's what I was as a hobby coach. Well, in my mind, a hobby coach had its own set of standards. This is what a hobby coach is. It's inconsistent is okay because it's just a hobby. Whenever I have the time, there's no requirement for me to do like the vital behaviors even or anything. It's just a hobby. Now, please hear me. I'm not like bashing hobby coaches. I think there's some people that fits in perfectly for their lives, and that is great for you. However, for those of you that are, but maybe want to be an all-in coach, like myself, that's where I was, then I urge you to consider what those standards are and your reasons for wanting to be a hobby coach. Is it that you've just set the standard for yourself that that's all you can do? Is it, again, like Ashley's talked about before, where you're just maybe afraid of the failure? Is it that you don't know how to create those rituals? What is it that is your reasons for setting those standards at that hobby coach level? So although I used to resent them, I'm coming around because I just recently, and I mean very, very recently, changed, nope, I'm all in. Now, here's why I didn't go all in before, and I can tell you my own reasons if there are other hobby coaches who maybe have some similar. My reasons were, in my mind, all in meant like all or nothing. Like that I had to, and even though no one ever said this, this is the standard that I defined and applied, was that, I had to like basically betray my career that I loved, that I had to, sacrifice my family time, that I'm a single mom and it's limited anyway. These are the standards that I had defined and set for what that meant. But I reevaluated that and I realized that's not what it has to be. And I can define what those standards are for myself and still be a completely all-in coach. It's now part of my identity. I'm working on the rituals side of it to get to that repetitive behavior that I become musts. Some things that I've done there are implementing power hours, no exception. And what that meant for me before was I started in the morning with, oh, I'm going to do my power hour sometime today. Maybe I'll do it at lunch. Maybe I'll do it here. And a lot of times I wouldn't. Now I've set those defined timelines of when I'm going to do certain things. Team Z has worked amazingly for that. I hate to like keep preaching on Team Z, but it's amazing, and it's a tool that will help me with those rituals and has helped me. But you know, it's not necessary. Where I'm at now and where I encourage you to be, if you're defining some of those new standards and needing to create those rituals, is learn from the best. Look for mentors. We have an amazing one, Ashley, but there's other ones out there too. There's no need to recreate the wheel. Find out what their rituals are. Copy them. Do them. There's a reason they work. We've said, you know, Ashley says this all the time. There's a reason, you know, these things, these trainings, these tools work. It's because, it's because they work. So it's just aligning yourself with what those rituals are and accepting those as your musts, as your standards for who you are as that level of coach. So here's my final slide. You've probably seen this before, but I just thought it kind of captured the gist of everything. And that is, you don't get what you want in life, you get what you believe you deserve. Or another way of saying it is, you don't get what you want in life, you get whatever standards you've set for yourself. Girls, we deserve a lot. We need to raise those standards. We need to create new rituals, and let's go get it, whether that's in our relationships, coaching, finances, whatever it is. Let's not settle anymore. Let's raise the bar and conquer it. And that's all I have.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Okay, can you unshare your screen so we can see everybody and open up for anybody who has any questions or comments before I spend our last few minutes gabbing?
Hold on. I know how to share my screen. I don't know how to unshare.
At the top, I think it says stop share somewhere. Maybe the people there we go. Okay. So that was amazing. I love it. I took notes. I have some nuggets I want to share, but before I share my thoughts, I want to open it up. Does anybody else have anything that they want to say or takeaways that they have from this call? Nobody? Anybody? Okay, so I'll talk. So one, I absolutely loved your analogy of the sponge. And for me personally, I needed to hear that today because I actually had something, and I could tell you about it privately, where this particular thing came up. And I will say in the past with my friends that have known me for a really, really, really long time, they just kind of were here. And I was coming, not that I'm better, but like my motivation and drive for myself was changing. And I felt like there just was this drift and this shift in our relationship. And they honestly didn't get what I'm doing. They still don't get what I'm doing. It kind of has to do with that video of the haters. Like, not everybody's going to get what you're doing. So you can't make these people get it. You just have to keep going and find new people of influence to be around and surround yourself with the people who get it. Because not everybody's going to get it. And it's not your job to make them get it. Just keep being you, and they might come around eventually because you just are consistent with your behavior. So I really loved that because it's true. If you have negative Nancy friends, you're just going to get sucked into it. It happens, and it feels gross, and you just have to get them off of you. And lastly, I absolutely loved your analogy about the hobby coach and the all-in coach. I loved that because you're right. When you label somebody as a discount coach or a hobby coach, the standards that you have for them and the expectations you have for them are here. And what I love that you can be an all-in coach, but that doesn't mean you have to give up your life or you have to quit your job or you have to earn $100,000 every year. You can be an all-in coach and still help a handful of people every day. Your standards can be a little bit different, but you can still be all in. Right. So I'm going to ask, who's all in? Woo! Like all in. Now, does that mean my all in looks different from Lynnette's all in? Sure. Is mine better than hers? Absolutely not. So where you are in this business and you might think, well, Ashley wants me to be all in. Does that mean Ashley wants me to be her? Because I don't want that. You don't have to have this. I don't know if you want it. It's freaking a disaster. But be all in for what that looks for you. And I encourage you to raise your standards and your rituals. And if you're curious, like as somebody who's an all-in coach, what somebody's rituals look like, ask, post in the team page. Tag a leader. If you see somebody and you're like, what does your day look like? What are you doing? What are your rituals? I'll share anything. because I think sometimes we're unsure of what we should be doing and what the things are. So we just kind of are like, well, I'm supposed to be working, but what am I supposed to be doing? I don't really know. Who feels like that sometimes? We're like, I want to work my business, but I don't know what to do. So just ask. And I think TeamZ is a great place to start. I'll plug it too, because it tells you who to talk to. So anybody else have any other questions or concerns or anything they want to mention tonight?
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead quickly, Kristen, because then Danielle has something.
Okay. So that was amazing. Oh my God, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to know, you said that you are living intentionally. I wanted to suggest a book to you. I don't know if you've read it or not, but Intentional Living by John Maxwell.
It's on my Amazon list.
Okay. It will blow your mind, especially if that's how you're living. So that's all I wanted to say. But great job, girl.
Cool, thanks.
Danielle, what do you have to say?
Can you hear me? I'm driving.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to say that was obviously awesome, and that the managing of the relationship with someone that you're having an issue with is so important, because I've recently done that with somebody that didn't agree with what I was doing, and you can't let one person like just go over your dreams. And so I think that's super important, and so that had to be done really intentionally, and I completely agree with that. So you go, girl.
Okay, everybody really quick, smile at the camera because I'm going to take a picture. Oh, maybe not. Come here. Hold on, smile. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lynnette. That was awesome. And you know what? I guarantee you, Lynnette got more out of presenting to us than we probably got from her, because that's what it is when you do something. So if you want to talk to the team, you don't have to be a diamond, you don't got to be an emerald. You can share your thoughts with us. Reach out to me and I will put you on my calendar, because I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing from me. So I'd love any more volunteers that want to lead a team call. And thank you, Lynnette. You rocked.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bye, guys.
Bye.